Well, good afternoon to you. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, Rabbi Yaakov Menken will be with us, Managing Director for the Coalition for Jewish Values. We'll talk about the ongoing situation, the war in Israel, and the response by the American left. So crazy, so much anti-Semitism pouring out of every one of these lefty institutions. The rabbi will react to that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A number of ships either headed to or potentially slated to go to the Eastern Mediterranean. Publication Stars and Stripes today, headline, U.S. considers moving second aircraft carrier into Eastern Mediterranean. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower could soon be deployed to the Eastern Mediterranean, a defense official saying Tuesday. It's a move that would position a second U.S. aircraft carrier in the region as fighting rages between Israeli forces and Hamas terrorists. The Eisenhower, along with other ships and aircraft that make up its strike group, is scheduled to depart Norfolk, Virginia this week. The aircraft carrier has long been scheduled to deploy and operate near Europe, according to Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Brian McGarry, the Defense Department spokesman. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin Sunday ordered the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group to the region as a part of the U.S. response to the Hamas attack. The Ford, also based in Norfolk, was already operating in the Mediterranean. That carrier strike group had been conducting naval exercises just last week with Italy. For more on this, I want to bring in Lt Col Tony Shaffer now. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research, a CIA-trained former senior intelligence officer, and on the phone with us now. Tony, good to have you with us, sir.
Vince, I always enjoy our conversation. Thanks for having me.
We've got what is a very obviously hot war now between Israel and Hamas, and U.S. warships headed in that direction. What do you make of the scene right now?
So I think they're going to deploy the Eisenhower actually to the Red Sea. I'm not sure of having two of them in the Mediterranean would be the best bet, since there's going to be other things you have to do with those things. And I think the primary reason they put the Gerald Ford there is to deter Hezbollah and the Iranians from any additional antics. And again, I'm speaking from experience, not any direct knowledge. We've probably moved special operations forces that we maintain in the region in Egypt and in Jordan closer to the scene of the crime, if you will, the Hamas attacks, because we've got U.S. hostages. I still think they're underplaying it. They just announced 22 murdered. I said that they were undercounting it by half that a few days ago, and sure enough, they did. I think the number of hostages, the U.S. hostages, are probably closer between 30 to 40. So I think there's a number of conversations going on right now between the Israelis and U.S. Special Forces about what can be done rapidly to get in there and get those folks out. So it's quite the tenuous situation. Still rockets flying out of the Gaza Strip.
Yep.
I talked to Ambassador Ido Hararoni, one of my colleagues, and he said that he's very close to the action. A lot of tension still going on, and indeed, one of the choices they're doing right now is they're doing the siege. They cut off all the food, water, supplies. But believe it or not, they're actually considering negotiating to get some of the hostages back. It came as a shock to me.
Right. The Biden administration indicated today, John Kirby said that they have been negotiating with Hamas by way of the usual channels. That's through Qatar, because they're connected to Hamas. They have relationships with them. And also asked today whether or not the Biden administration is negotiating directly with Hamas. Kirby declined to answer the question. Didn't give a yes, didn't give a no. But clearly there is negotiating going on in a bunch of different directions to get Americans free. But the Biden administration today indicated, again, John Kirby, they don't actually know the number of American hostages. They don't know their condition. They don't even know if they're grouped together. There are a tremendous number of mysteries going on here.
Right. So, again, not direct knowledge theory based on what we study. I think they've got the hostages grouped into about 12 different groups dispersed through the area. For the audience to remember, the area that they're operating in, the Gaza Strip, is about the size of Manhattan plus the Bronx. Very densely populated, too many people. A lot of places to hide people, but I don't think they've dispersed them beyond clusters of about 12 groups. And to that point, I think they've kept probably nationalities together. We're not the only ones. The Italians have folks captured, a couple of nationalities. So I think they're probably keeping them together for purposes of negotiation. But to your point, yeah, John Kirby's denial is a confirmation. Of course, they're negotiating directly with Hamas. I would argue, Vince, that the Biden administration is largely responsible for providing the conditions of the attack by encouraging Iran to become more violent, more aggressive. And while everybody, I think, recognizes the $6 billion that was going to Iran didn't get there, the simple fact that they caved and gave him that was the basic conditions that encouraged, I think, Iran to support this attack by Hamas.
Not to mention the rampant amounts of kind of wink and a nod sanctions relief the Biden administration has given to Iran on oil.
Right.
Iran has made a tremendous amount of money from the Biden administration's decision to restrict the international oil market, to restrict the output of American oil. And that has enabled Iran and Russia, of course, to finance their military operations against both now Israel and Ukraine, respectively.
Of course. Think about this, Vince. I mean, if Biden wanted to defund Iran and defund Putin's war, you open our spigots. You drop the price of oil to $1.50 a gallon. You create such positive conditions for American industry to grow, for American to prosper, and to defund the very adversaries we say we're against. But of course, they won't do it.
So what did you make of the fact that in Biden's 10-minute teleprompter remarks yesterday that he never once mentioned Iran? What did you make of that?
It's like trying to talk about, the moon without mentioning anything regarding the Earth. The Earth and the moon are related. Well, Iran and terror is related, and he didn't mention it. I think it's because of the very things you and I are speaking about, Vince. Any conversation about what the administration has done to benefit Iran would obviously look bad regarding the fact that they probably enabled Hamas. And I'm going to go on the record here and say this. I think there's ample opportunity for Iran to have actually coached and assisted Hamas to overcome and avoid detection by the Israeli intelligence system. There was a very sophisticated intelligence effort to counter the intelligence of the Israelis. So I think Iran was part of that. So again, you don't want to mention the guy who actually was in the room helping mug the guy across the room if you would don't have to. I think it's exactly why they didn't do it.
So I mean, there's a couple things here that drive me crazy. One of them is that the Wall Street Journal has never retracted the reporting that it put out this past weekend that Tehran was directly involved in the planning for this attack, including by bringing in both Hezbollah and Hamas together to coordinate how this attack was going to be conducted. And nobody seems to bring that up. There's a major American news outlet that's put it on the record that their reporting shows them this, and they claim that their sources are Hezbollah and Hamas, who told them this detail. Additionally, this does kind of feel like goalpost shift. It is goalpost shifting on the part of the Biden administration to say that they need to find the direct evidence of Tehran ordering the attack or something. Tehran has been funding Hamas all along. Of course Iran was involved.
Yeah, of course, and this is where John Kirby and others are being very disingenuous. They mark my words, Vince. They've got the direct evidence. I've been in those rooms. They have all got classified intercepts. They're just pretending they don't know. That's how the game is played. And I would
in
go
order to
with
cover
the Wall Street Journal
in order
report.
to. I'm sorry, but to emphasize this point. The reason they're not saying it is what? To cover up sources and methods, or to protect their own butts, or something. What's the answer here?
To protect their own political narrative and what they're trying to do. Remember, the Biden administration said they want to revise the joint agreed upon framework for allowing the nuclear deal to get back on. And also, they've done everything they can to essentially nudge the Arabs out from our primary partner. This goes back to the Carter administration. For whatever reason, the Democrats have always wanted to partner with the mullahs over our Arab allies, and this is more of that. Frankly, at this point, Vince, I think part of the reason that they encourage Hamas to act is because the Israelis and the South were entering a new phase of normalization of relationships. And that's the last thing the Iranians want, is a normalization of the Israelis working more closely at the commercial and economic level with the Saudis.
Well, also, it would be kind of the big achievement that the Trump administration had started, which is to
Right.
normalize these bilateral relationships between Arab countries and Israel. Obviously, the Trump administration was pushing to get Saudi Arabia to sign on. They started that
That's right.
process. If that had come to a conclusion, that would have been what was already great relationships that the Trump administration had set up. Trump's place in history in terms of provoking some peace in the Middle East would have been well established.
That's all. It's almost as good an idea as a border wall here at our southwest border, Vince.
No question. And so how concerned on that issue, how concerned are you about our domestic security situation as it relates to groups like Hamas and Hezbollah with our border wide open?
Put this in perspective. 25 kibbutz were destroyed because of people being unarmed. These are basically gun-free zones. For any number of reasons, I think would take too long to explain. But suffice it to say, there's no Second Amendment. There's no civilians with guns except for one. The one kibbutz that had a guy with a gun, they stopped the terrorists. With that said, Vince, we have within our own country a number of very significant gun-free zones. Everything from airports to malls, to inner cities, which basically have no real protection other than police, which are already put upon by the local criminals. We only see 1 in 10 people stopped at the border. That is, say, for everyone that they acknowledge they've stopped or basically interdicted, 10 get through. It's those 10 I worry about that are getting in.
Right.
And obviously, people somehow think, oh, this can't happen here. Famous last words. We have to be very concerned what's coming through the border right now because it's completely open.
Well, the Judiciary Committee just had this report out this week that of the illegal immigrants that the Biden administration comes into contact with here in the country, just 1% of them are ever deported now. 99% of all the illegal aliens in our country are staying.
Yep. And again, we just don't know who they are. And I have no problem. My family came here as immigrants. Nobody is against immigration. The question becomes, why are we allowing this unmitigated compromise of the border to include the potential of terrorist or other criminal activities? We know about the fentanyl, Vince. We know about child trafficking. We know all this, and yet somehow it's permitted. And it's a very dangerous situation that we're going to come to find ourselves on a similar sneak attack if we're not careful, just like it happened with the Israelis and Hamas.
Let me return to the issue of Israel for our final conversation here.
Sure.
Colonel Tony Shaffer on the phone with us. When we think about what comes next, the U.S. involvement, we talk about these warships that are on the move now. Obviously, I think there are very few people in the country, the polling shows this, who trust Joe Biden to handle this in any competent way. But how much of a risk do we run into a full-blown war that involves a bunch of different countries?
Miscalculation is the greatest danger to peace at this point because of the very fact that people can't trust Joe Biden. Even our adversaries and allies don't know. It emboldens our enemies and discourages our allies, Vince. That's what makes it so dangerous. And I'm telling you right now, Biden was 3 days late in making a statement regarding the attacks, and it was like he was squinting just to read the teleprompter, which didn't really come across as a convincing argument of strength.
Yeah. You don't even need to speak English. You don't need to speak English to get that crappy message.
That's right. That's right. So that's what the danger is. Well, our military is doing what it always does. We've got contingencies for this stuff. They're always ready to act. Again, I've been there. I know how it works. But the question is political will or lack of political will. That's what is the unknown right now.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, as always, president of the London Center for Policy Research. Thank you, sir, for your time today. Let's take some calls here. We've got Steve calling in from Ashburn, line 5. Steve, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. Excellent subject. It's challenging all of us on what we're going to do next. So I'll make one quick comment. We hear about all the assets being sent into theater. If we're sending in A-10s, those are close air support. I would like to think that we don't have to, but if we do, those are going in and doing some damage very near over the target.
Is this the A-10 Warthog? Is that what that is?
That's right. Warthog. Its official name is Thunderbolt. This is what the Martha McSally flew.
I don't know a tremendous amount about it, but I knew it's the plane that sounds. It's got an incredible sound as the guns fire. It's like a very you can't miss it.
Yes, that's one of its major weapons. It's a the cannon. Essentially, it's a Gatling gun, machine gun up front, and it's just like a flying tank.
Yeah,
is what it is. Very it can really take a licking and keep on ticking like a Timex watch.
So it's devastating.
But it is devastating, and that's why we have it. If we have assets, and this is an interesting point. This isn't something that this event wasn't just some people did something. These are Americans who were killed. And if we're not willing to use our assets, our resources, our national power, political, diplomatic, and military, then who are we? How will our allies trust us? Will our enemies fear us? We have to stand up, and it doesn't matter what your political stripe is. This is something where we have essentially been attacked, and we have to take action.
Well, the moral atrocities are crystal clear here, and certainly there are American lives very much on the line. Many of them already lost, certainly a bunch that are being held hostage right now. God, I wish we were in a position where we could better trust the administration that's in charge at the moment, because a lot of critical decisions need to be made, including what does a hostage rescue look like? You know, we have special operations guys who specialize in this very thing. But that means, getting in there and killing people to try and save American citizens. I think we're going to see a lot of things happen in the short term. And you really want somebody with a steady hand who can manage it the right way. And this guy can barely do a teleprompter. That's what I know right now. Steve, thank you. I appreciate the call. Coming up, we've got a lot more in terms of all of these breaking headlines for you. And Rabbi Yaakov Menken will be joining us here in the next hour to talk about all of the anti-Semitism that is just flowing out of the left in public these days, and the backlash to some of it, which will give you some optimism as decent Americans everywhere stand up and say, no, that's not at all who we are. Hey there, 4:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, we'll be joined by Rabbi Yaakov Menken from the Coalition for Jewish Values. We'll talk about this situation in Israel and all the anti-Semitism the left has on display this week, rooting for Hamas after they decapitate babies, rape women, kidnap Israelis and American citizens, kill so many. Just the most brutal treatment. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. It is amazing. Even if you're on the sidelines of some issue like this and you haven't thought much about it, you do see the images of the barbarism. You do hear the stories. And I don't know how you could walk away with any other interpretation of events than that a bunch of savages poured across the border into Israel and destroyed the homes, communities, and lives of a bunch of Israelis just for being Jewish. That was it. They just want to kill them. They've said it forever. Hamas has made this their whole existence. Israel has to be erased. And then they go in and they rape and slaughter women and children and kidnap them. It's just amazing. And yet here we are with college after college across the country, these elite institutions signaling their support for Hamas. Student groups coming out, signing big letters. We stand with the Palestinian people. What are you talking about? What is wrong with you? This is all of these attitudes. We explored it a bit yesterday, but they are fundamentally. It was Charisse Trump we talked to about this yesterday with Speech First. Fundamentally, these are anti-Western attitudes. They hate Western civilization. They hate liberal democracies. They hate liberty. I realize that in the past when people would talk about terrorism, they'd use sort of like kind of blunt bumper sticker assessments. They hate our freedom. But the broader sort of goal of the Marxist left, as it's identified, these collectivists around the world, including right here in the United States, overseas, among these Islamists, is that they really do hate the West. They really do. And this is why you can have, I heard our friend Dan Bongino talking about this in part earlier, but this is why you can have such obviously incompatible groups being linked together. How can Rshida Tlaib have a Palestinian and a gay pride flag flying outside of her office? How does that even make any sense whatsoever? The Palestinians would behead, rape, and push off buildings the people in the rainbow flag category. Hamas would do that. So how do you do that? How do you have those two flags at the same time? Well, the answer is that there is a fundamental animosity for our system, fundamental animosity for Israel. The left doesn't stand up for indigenous people. You want evidence of that? Look no further than what we saw this week. The left is rooting for the indigenous people of Israel to be destroyed. They're not rooting on behalf of the Jewish people. They're rooting against them. Indigenous people die. Where is the land disclosure for Israel? Do they have to do land disclosures in the Gaza Strip? Do they have to do land disclosures? Like when Americans go to Israel, do you have to do a land disclosure? This place was where the Jews were. Like, no, they don't do that. They don't treat Israelis that way. They don't treat Jewish people that way. No, it doesn't fit in to their anti-Western world. But we have to destroy all of this, destroy these traditions, destroy liberal democracy, destroy capitalism, elevate Marxism, elevate socialism. And so everyone's having this moment where they're waking up. Isn't it weird to see people waking up around you after you've known this for as long as you have known this? Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. 2020. How many people fell for the moral blackmail of BLM? How many friends of yours posted some black square to Instagram? I stand with Black Lives Matter. What are they now? What are they doing right now? They're rooting on Hamas. You have Black Lives Matter chapters across the country who are posting to social media that they support Hamas. You have college student groups that are using images of Hamas terrorists floating across the border in paragliders with fans behind them as a rallying cry to support the Palestinian cause. People are being exposed, aren't they? And you're seeing that in some cases, we're looking at, there are law firms that are revoking their offers to law students who have engaged in this sort of lunatic free speech in public. There are some consequences for being such ghouls, apparently, because you're demonstrating your immense ignorance, obviously, when you come out and you're like, I stand with Hamas. Okay, you can't have a job here. It's not a free speech issue. We just don't hire morons. We'd rather not have morons working here. And you've staked out clear territory being an idiot. And Black Lives Matter, man, I can't remember the Twitter account. Corey, did you see this today? There was a lefty who had tweeted a couple years ago, and everyone's pointing it out on social media today. He had tweeted a couple years ago, I stand with BLM. I'll always stand with BLM. He just tweeted, like in the last 24 hours, hey, I think the right may have been correct about BLM. And not the Bureau of Land Management for our Western listeners. the Black Lives Matter organization. I may have been wrong about them. Well, I mean, what signs did you need? Patrisse Cullors and all these other people associated with BLM, they were bragging that they were a Marxist institution for a long time. This is not some secret or surprise or anything. They've been saying that they stand against Israel for a long time. They've been attacking Israel for as long as they've been speaking in public. But, of course, the media doesn't want to focus on that detail. We stand with the Palestinians, they would say. It's crazy. And then, of course, you have members of Congress who do this, too, on a routine basis. Rshida Tlaib is among them. Now, this is one of the easiest news cycles for an American politician, isn't it? In terms of just what do you say? You don't need media training for this. I don't need to sit you down and go, okay, look, if somebody asks you, what do you think of the Hamas terror attack on Israel? What are you going to say? Let's talk it out, because I want to make sure you say the right thing. Like, what human being would need to be coached through that exchange? You wouldn't. You'd be like, that is depraved. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's an act of pure terrorism and evil. On and on and on. You just come out and you say what it is. Not if you're Rshida Tlaib. No, not at all. Here's Rshida Tlaib running from Fox News' Hillary Vaughn yesterday. And listen to how this went.
Terrorists have cut off babies' heads and burned children alive. Do you support Israel's rights to defend themselves against this brutality?
Do you support Israel's rights to defend themselves? Israeli children have had their heads cut off by Hamas. Do you support Israel's right to defend themselves? The answer to that question, ready, is yes. It's just one word. Yes, I do. 3 words. Not that complicated. Here is Rshida Tlaib fearful of answering the question.
We're just going to go through here.
You can't comment about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads.
Blink twice if Hamas is holding your family members hostage or something. Why aren't you answering this question?
Congresswoman, do you have a comment on Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads? You have nothing to say about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads?
She's just anti-Semitic. The answer is she just hates Israel. That's it. I mean, is there another answer? Am I missing something? It just stares you right in the face. She hates these people. She hates them. And so she can't even speak up when they have their children's heads removed from their bodies. These are babies we're talking about. They said, what, 40 babies found dead in this area? Several of which, they had no number on the number that were decapitated, a lot. Shot dead, a baby. And that's just dozens of the many atrocities that took place in Israel this past weekend. The atrocities continue. There are hundreds of hostages in Hamas's custody right now. And Rshida Tlaib, supposed to be an American politician, is meeting obvious questions with silence.
Do you condone what Hamas has done, chopping off babies' heads, burning children alive, raping women in the street?
You have nothing to say?
You have no comment about children's heads being chopped off?
You disgusting wench. You have nothing to say? Nothing at all. I think at one point she just glances over at Hillary Vaughn. Like I'm going to answer you. Rshida Tlaib must have thought, this is the longest hallway I've ever been stuck in a reporter with. How do I get out of this situation? I don't want to have to answer this.
Congressman, why do you have a Palestinian flag outside your office if you do not condone what Hamas terrorists have done to Israel? Do Israeli lives not matter to you?
What is happening? So where are the Democrats? Where are the rest of the Democrats on this? Congressman Dan Goldman, the Levi Strauss heir, was on Fox this morning. Lawrence Jones asked him about this moment, this Rshida Tlaib non-exchange. Dan Goldman, according to the internet, was raised in a conservative Jewish family. So you'd think he would have an answer to this that would include she should condemn this. It's outrageous that she didn't. Here's Dan Goldman. Let's hear what he said.
You have protests in New York City where they have swastikas. When you have, even your colleague, respectfully, Rshida Tlaib, has not been as forceful against what's happening. How do you go back to the Hill and try to get them to rally for the Israeli people?
Look, there are fringe parts of many different parties. There are conservative marches in the South with swastikas all the time. Anti-Semitism is rampant.
100%. So what do you say to your party? What do you say to...
I don't know about the 100% thing. Look, the identitarian sect of America, which is predominantly a left-wing phenomenon in terms of just party affiliation, is grotesque because it boils down people to their immutable characteristics and then makes broad judgments about them, negative or positive or otherwise. And that's the dumbest possible way to view another human. It's deeply ignorant. And my view has always been that, it's not a matter of strictly party affiliation. It's more about just gross ignorance on display. The people who recognize humans in their fullness for who they are versus those who don't, who view them in an ignorant way. And to the extent that there is party affiliation, the left is dominated by what we call euphemistically identity politics. That is, you judge people based on these single characteristics. What color's their skin? What is their race? What is their religion? What is their gender? Their gender is fluid. What is their gender identity, right? This is the game the left plays, and it's one that's built fundamentally on prejudice, that you deserve certain things because of an immutable characteristic, or because of in the case of your gender, a mutable characteristic in their view, or you judge, or the way the rest of us do it, we judge people based on achievement, merit, their humanity. We recognize they were made in the image of God, the way that a functioning society would operate. So Goldman's party is beset by the very attitudes here that he's trying to like cast off onto the right. He's like, what? You know, it happens on the right. There's these right-wing things that are happening. It's like, what are you talking about? He asked you about Rshida Tlaib. Can you account for the insanity that she has had on display this week?
It's because all the time. Anti-Semitism is rampant.
100%. So what do you say to your party? What do you say to...
I've had conversations with them, and you know, Representative Ocasio-Cortez has condemned both that rally...
Nobody asked about AOC. Tlaib, why are you dancing away from this?
And the Hamas attacks. And what we're talking about here is terrorism.
Oh, my gosh. He's pathetic. Isn't he pathetic? That guy's pathetic. Man, you can tell he's the heir to a fortune. He hasn't had to work for anything. He's not even capable of meandering through an answer. So that's what's happening. Meanwhile, in Dearborn, Michigan last night, big rally on behalf of Hamas. The attack was on Israel. The attack was on the civilians of Israel. Here's some of the audio from last night, Dearborn, Michigan.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! No justice! Put your flags up! No justice! No justice!
These people are idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about. And if they do, they're evil. It's ignorance or evil. It is amazing. And you know, Rshida Tlaib, not the only lawmaker, not the only Democrat who's acting like this. There's this Democrat Colorado state representative by the name of Tim Hernandez who gave a very flippant answer when he was confronted by a man in Colorado about what Hamas had done. They were at a rally, again, another one of these rallies. Like, oh, we've got a rally to support Hamas, pro-Palestine. Immediately after Israeli women are raped and murdered. Israeli children are killed. Israelis are kidnapped. American citizens are kidnapped and murdered. And they're doing, let's have a pro-Palestine rally now. You know what would be great? Let's launch a rally right now against Israel. So Tim Hernandez, that's the name of this guy, Democrat Colorado state representative. He was confronted by a man who was standing up for decency. And I got to say, this Democrat didn't think that this would be heard far and wide, that nobody would ever hear this footage. Well, we've got news for him. That's coming up. The guy's name is Tim Hernandez. He's a Colorado state representative and, yes, a Democrat, rallying in support of Hamas this week. How else can you describe it? Let's have a pro-Palestine rally after Hamas rapes and kills Israelis. Here's Tim Hernandez asked whether or not he wants to condemn Hamas. Here's how he answered with contempt.
And I think it's despicable what they're protesting for and what you're protesting for. And the fact that you can't condemn women and children and elderly people being murdered in the streets.
What about it?
Do you condemn it?
I already said.
Why can't you say yes?
Because I already gave you my answer.
You didn't give an answer. And I think anybody who would watch this would understand what your actual position is here.
3 people that are going to watch your bullshit video, Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the 3 people that are going to watch your bleeping video, this guy's been seen a lot today. He's been seen a lot. Sorry, it's not just 3 people. It's a lot of people, including just now. Once again, getting your voice out there, scumbag, Tim Hernandez. Yeah, so this is the way the left is handling this. And it's gotten so bad that even CNN is starting to notice, hey, the left really has a problem here. Here's Jake Tapper last night reacting to the endless evidence we have that the left can't control its anti-Semitism. Listen to this.
These last few days have been a real eye-opening period for a lot of people, a lot of Democrats, a lot of progressives, in terms of anti-Semitism on the left. A lot of people who seem more shocked at dehumanizing language used by world leaders to describe Hamas than what Hamas actually perpetrated on Saturday.
Yes, it's amazing. It's very eye-opening, says Jake Tapper. Why is it eye-opening? Why is it surprising people? They didn't see this? They weren't aware of Rshida Tlaib's long-running hatred for Israel, long-running anti-Semitism. They weren't aware of any of this? What news outlets may have told them to prevent this surprise from occurring? Maybe if CNN's audience was a little bit more informed on what was actually going on, there wouldn't be eye-opening moments happening right now. At least something's opening their eyes, even at this late date. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be joined by Rabbi Yaakov Menken. He'll talk to us about exactly what's going on in America and how we can make things a little bit better. That's ahead.